Hello everyone, we are here for our webinar, our MA Screenwriting Meet the Professionals webinar from London Film School. We're going to carry on waiting just for a few more minutes for a few more people to join us, so bear with us just a few more moments. Still some more people joining, lots of people logging on. Okie dokie, I think we can get started. So, hello and welcome to everybody joining us for this webinar. It's brilliant to be hosting this webinar with our very welcome guests. I'm going to be turning myself off in a minute, but we will be doing a Q&A at the end of the session. So, if anybody does have any questions, please do hang on until the end of the session and we'll get to those questions then. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over to Sophia Wellington and Chris Orty.
Hi there. My name's Chris Orty. I'm the director of the London Film School.
Hi, and I'm Sophia Wellington, and I run the screenwriting programme here at the London Film School.
So welcome to us. We're speaking to you from our relatively new home. It's only a year old in Covent Garden, where we occupy two buildings. This is the most recent of them, and it houses everything from post-production to seminar rooms. And a camera department, and it sits on top of a wonderful three-screen art house cinema called the Garden Cinema, which is one of the liveliest repertory cinemas in London today. The other site is close by. It's only a 5-minute walk to our original building, which we've refurbished this year, and that has been our home since 1964. And over there, we have two cinemas of our own, as well as more shooting space and more classroom space. So the school's expanding. It's now just starting its 70th year, hard to believe. And I've been here for 2 years. Sophia has been running the screenwriting program
For about 7 now.
for about 7 years. And the
7
program
years.
itself is now, I think, 21
years.
years young.
Yes.
Um,
Celebrating our anniversary this year.
which is a wonderful achievement, and it's become a legendary course, the screenwriting course. It was the first new course opened by the school on the back of its success with the long running filmmaking course, which the school has run really ever since the 60s and which has got some very famous alumni. We're proud of our independence, we're proud of our artistic freedom, we're proud of our alumni, and tonight really is about celebrating those alumni and their work and their experiences, and also trying to give a sense of how what seems perhaps from the outside a scary and complicated world is not that scary, and how we ourselves are not scary at all. The school is a very welcoming place. It's relatively small. We are, as I always say, a film school, not a university, and we have about 300 students at any given time. The screenwriting course, which Sophia will describe in some detail in a minute, is a 1-year course, and so are the other new courses which we've added in the last year, producing course and a film marketing course. The values of the school have been pretty consistent. A bit bolshy, a very indie, fun, I would say, very international, and host to 1,000 opinions and 1,000 views, and the launching pad for many careers. And we'll be looking forward to hearing from Nicole and Richard and Theo when they talk about their own careers and their own opportunities after the school. There's very little more to say before I hand over to Sophia, but just an emphasis on the fact that we welcome queries and we welcome inquiry. So if at the end of this session you haven't got what you need or you've got a particular question, just drop us an email and you will get a response. It's not a robot system, it's a human system, and we take a lot of pride in that. The door is open physically and the door is open psychologically. So we look forward to hearing any questions you've got, even the ones you forgot to ask us this evening. And without further ado, I'll just hand over to Sophia to talk a little bit about the sort of experience of the course itself, and it's perhaps a little bit about how it runs.
So, hello everyone, and welcome to this is the second online event that we've held. I will talk a little about the course, but for those who want more detail, there's an original recording which can be shared where I talk in detail about screenwriting and give an overview. But just briefly, it's a 1 year, very intensive course. Over the course of this time, our screenwriters will write a short film, many will develop a TV idea, and they all write 2 or 3 drafts of a feature screenplay. They do that within this space of a film school where they are collaborating with the filmmakers and now with our 2 new programs, the producers and those in MA marketing and international film business. So this is a space where, though we focus on screenwriting and the skills of screenwriting, this is all within the sphere of being working within the industry, working within the film industry and collaborating and networking with others. We always say that your first network starts here. So that's one of those things that we really encourage. This is not a place where screenwriters sit alone in their room and write. This is absolutely a place where screenwriters share ideas, find their collaborators, and find people they want to work with. So we are always interested in, well, you focus on screenwriting, I'd say we're always interested in storytelling. And I think that speaks to the ethos of the school, which really started with this notion that screenwriting was filmmaking, and also the people who work here and teach on the school. Everybody in the screenwriting program also works within the industry, and they work in different roles from writers, development. We have some writer directors, producers, all with storytelling and screenwriting skills, but also with a strong sense of the industry, which is one of the things that they always bring to their teaching. And myself, I've been running the course for 7 years, but I've been involved with the film school for quite a few years. And like many who work here, I started as an industry mentor with screenwriters many years ago, who I'm still in contact with. And I came from a filmmaking background, started on cameras, moved into the cutting room where I learned an awful lot about story, and then moved into development where I worked with writers and worked with the producer Tony Garnett in his company World Productions, developing feature screenplays. So I bring a really sort of holistic approach to screenwriting and see it within this space of being in the industry and being a filmmaker, really, working within film and TV. Which is why I'm like super pleased to be able to talk to and introduce 3 alums who are all working in the industry in different roles. And what I will do is I will hand over to the 3 of them to introduce themselves, say a few words, and then we'll just have a quick discussion about how they work, what they're working on, and what they think about the industry. But before that, I should also stress this event really is for you, the audience. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. I'll keep an eye on those and we'll try to answer those within this hour. Or else, as Chris said, feel free to email and we'll get back to you. So that's me in a quick overview of the course and the philosophy of the course. And I'd like to go over to Theo James Krekis. Theo, welcome. It's lovely to see you. Haven't seen you for a couple of years. Do
Yes,
you want
hiya.
to give us a quick intro, what you're up to, who you are?
Yes, my name's Theo. I'm a writer director working across film, television, and commercials. I'm currently writing my debut feature film, which is in development with BBC Film. Currently writing my original series, which is in development with BBC and Clerkenwell Films, who just did Baby Reindeer. And I'm also writing on Stephen Knight's new series for BBC One and Kudos. And um, I've just made a short film, Jealous People Are Ugly People, which was funded by the BBC and is heading to South by Southwest next week. That's
Wonderful.
everything.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
You're not too busy then.
A little bit.
Yeah, really, really appreciate you finding the time for this hour. And Nicole, I think you're in Los Angeles, aren't you? It's first thing in the morning there for you.
Yes. Oh, it's 10, 11.
Okay, not too bad.
Fine. Yeah. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole. I am a Ugandan American writer, director, and producer and multimedia journalist. And I just moved to LA last September from Nairobi, where I was a creative executive for a development company, for a production company that's based in LA. I was the Africa producer for 3 years. And while before that, and also during my creative executive experience, I made a short as a writer, director, and producer, got a massive grant from the Open Society Foundation that allowed me and amazing filmmakers in Uganda to train and, get upcoming filmmakers in the region, make shorts. And so I produced 3 shorts and also produced a short in DC with an alum from LFS. And yeah, I'm currently writing and also working on my short that I want to shoot this year. But yeah, writing all the time.
Thanks, Nicole. And Richard, tell us about you and your new project, which I think is coming out soon.
That's correct. Hi, Sophia. Hello, everyone. How's it going? So my name's Richard. I graduated from LFS in 2019 and had a little bit of success coming straight out of film school in the sort of theatre world. I had a short play performed at the Southwark Playhouse. And I also ended up like runner-up in the Kenneth Branagh Award for New Voices, New Writing, potentially. I went to Series Mania. I was really lucky to be chosen as the only British applicant that year with a TV show called At Sea. But probably my biggest sort of honor so far in the film and TV industry is I wrote a film called Learning to Breathe Underwater. And it was optioned about 4 years ago, and this time last year it was filmed, and yeah, it's coming out at some point this year, hopefully in the next few months. It's just trying to find a film festival at the moment, but yeah, it stars Rory Kinnear, as you can see, and Maria Bakalova, and yeah, it'll be out at some point this year, and yeah, go and see it.
I think it's worth emphasizing, isn't it? I mean, you three are absolutely exemplars of this, that the industry is not just a little thing. It's a big thing. It's widely dispersed and there's a lot going on. And I thought that was, that emphasis on the range from theatre in London to Los Angeles via, Africa. It's a vibrant and fast-growing and global industry. And one of the great things about the school, of course, is its internationalism. I think we had 52 nationalities at the school last year, which is quite something. And it's part of the unique quality that infuses into the school. And I think is very noticeable when I meet students on the screenwriting course. We have filmmakers visiting a lot now because we are trying to, every 10 days, we're trying to get visiting filmmakers in. You in fact hosted the interview with Kleber Mendonça, the secret agent director and co-writer, in fact, of that film, who writes his own material a lot of the time. And he was at the school only 10 days ago, on his way through London as he was promoting that in his run up to the Oscars. So that sort of thing where students are getting the opportunity to engage with practitioners at the highest level. Obviously, we don't deliver Oscar nominees every week, 52 weeks a year, but in the run up to the awards season, we're certainly getting our fair share, and the new building has made that an awful lot easier. So for the you three who weren't here in the new building, please come back and visit us and see us in this new incarnation.
Definitely. So guys, this is, as I said, a chance for those listening to hear what you guys are doing out there in the industry, those steps outside, past the LFS to get where you are now. So Theo, I'll start with you. Did you come out as a writer director? How did you make that sort of transition into directing your own stuff?
Yeah, no, I was at LFS as a screenwriter, and it was more out of frustration of people not wanting to make what I was writing. Um, and yeah, I just thought, you know what, this was maybe 2 years after graduating, after, writing another screenplay, like a feature screenplay, sort of working on a TV idea. And obviously I was working another job just to pay for rent at that time, whilst trying to find a producer, trying to get development, trying to find directors who I wanted to work with. But no one was biting. So yeah, so it was more out of frustration. I was like, do you know what? I'm gonna try my hand at directing, and was really pragmatic about what I had at my disposal. My friend was a DOP, shot commercials, had a camera for like an extended weekend. So I knew that I had that at my disposal. I had a house that I was staying in, like, renting out. So I was like, okay, we can shoot here. So sort of, yeah, just ended up sort of wearing all the hats of different departments across a film production, and yeah, just made my first short and absolutely fell in love with it. That then went to London Film Festival. I then started making some other DIY shorts, made for like £200, £300, just to experiment, just to play, just to sort of carve my sort of tone of voice and just learn, basically, because it was all so new to me. I've always written and I've always loved writing, but it was like this whole other.
Oh, Theo, I'm not sure if we lost you. You've just gone muted.
Yeah, am I still here?
I can see you,
You're
yes.
back.
Yeah. My connection is unstable. Fantastic. It's never happened before. Sod's law. So yeah, I had two short films that went to London Film Festival that then got my toe in the door with the BFI, and I had written a short film called Pram Snatcher, and then the BFI gave us some money to go and make that, and that sort of opened the doors to getting an agent, meeting other sort of like larger production companies to talk about longer form sort of material. But it was a slog up until that point.
Worth noting, actually, that in the last 9 months, we've had both Mia Bays, who runs a large chunk of the BFI's commissioning, and Eva Yates, and also the new head of Film 4, come through and do sessions with the students. These are in the same slot that I was talking about, where we get directors. It's not just directors, it's writers like Chris Andrews, and recently Ken Loach's writer,
Paul
Laverty, which was a wonderful session, actually. And Paul started out as a lawyer and activist in Guatemala. So that was an incredible story of a life journey, as well as the writing experience, as well as the filmmaking partnership with one of Britain's greatest filmmakers. And I think that's something that people now can see they're getting as they come through the school. And I think it's one thing, by the way, and Sophia and I were joking about it earlier today, where I feel that the MA screenwriting students are particularly engaged with that process. It's really noticeable how they are consistently there for those events, how they ask the most penetrating questions, how they enjoy that moment, enormously. It's really wonderful to see.
No, we've always had a strong sense that the good screenwriting students are really entrepreneurial and they go out and they do their own things and they make things happen. And just to move to you, Nicole, because you had a similar thing. You had not directed before, had you? You were a writer, you came out of the school as a writer, and then the next thing I know, I hear that you're doing a short and then you direct a feature. Like,
Yeah.
how? How did that happen?
Before I go into that, actually, hearing Mia Baines' name reminds me of a workshop I took at LFS. She did a sales and distribution workshop 2 day weekend, and it was, I think, £125 for regular people, but there were a couple of slots for the LFS students, and I snagged one, and I always use the information that I learned in those 2 days. It was a phenomenal weekend. She's so brilliant. I think if anyone goes to school, there's so many opportunities that you can cross-pollinate. And I think that allowed me to imagine my life as a producer in addition to writing. But I had been doing broadcast journalism before and documentary and shooting behind the camera. I was quite comfortable. I loved it so much. I was a photographer. And so I felt that writing, though, was more a craft that needed patience, simmering, marinating. There was a lot that I didn't know. And I also felt isolated because I'd never, taken time out to go and write full time, which is very scary. It's not a cheap investment. That is worth investing is cheap, but I think doing that was a leap of faith, and the program encouraged us to think beyond. And I think because we were international, there were so many people who came from different backgrounds and what they were planning to do after the course. So I was able to lean on my classmates, James, Amir, even Theo. I don't know if Theo remembers. We were working on a short together after school, and I think keeping in touch, sharing. James gave me a lot of information on how to run Kickstarters. And that short did really well. We were in Pan-African Film Festival. It got distribution by Kinoloba and this upstart called Dedza Films. And we went into the Criterion Channel as part of an anthology of international films, and it was insane. But then it was like, okay, it doesn't stop. You keep going because the bug is real. It's so addictive. And directing is really intense and but not as crazy as producing. But yeah, that's how I ended up in that.
I mean, it's a funny thing. I mean, that you should highlight that because the last 10 months have seen an extraordinary run of events because two of the films in the main competition in Cannes last year were recent alumni, Mykola Simon and Oliver Hermanus, and two of the films in selection in Berlin and one of the films in Sundance were recent films by alumni. So the visibility of those films and the participation of our alumni in a business which is very much a worldwide thing is absolutely true now of the school in the day to day as we live it.
Absolutely, yes. And Richard, can I come to you and your experience? So you didn't go into directing, if I remember correctly. You went and you wrote an awful lot. And you went through the Brit list, didn't you? One of your projects was picked up there.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, what I would say quickly first is I'm incredibly jealous of Theo and Nicole because I always thought of myself as a pretty chill guy. I'm not massively like controlling, and I always just thought, oh, I just want to write scripts and then like send it off to someone else, and then it's their problem to deal with. But yeah, this process has made me realize that maybe I sort of wanted a little bit more control than I sort of maybe thought I did. I remember turning up on set for the first day of our principal photography with Learning to Breathe, and I just looked around and I was like, the film in my head at all. So yeah, but that is a really important lesson. I think if you do just purely want to be a writer, you do have to accept that you do your job and then you pass your sort of baby on, and then it's someone else's job to sort of rear that baby right through to the red carpet. But yeah, so in terms of how Learning to Breathe came about, I'd been at Series Mania, and I would definitely implore you guys, once you've graduated, to definitely apply for Series Mania, because it really was one of the most, fantastic experiences. Just in case any
Richard, sorry, can I just stop you? Could you just explain what Series Mania is?
Yeah, sorry. No, you're absolutely right. So it's basically a film festival, but just solely for television. So it's basically the Cannes of sort of TV. And yeah, I was lucky enough to be to travel over to Lille, and I spent a week there doing sort of workshops, and then we spent 3 days sort of pitching to yeah, all manner of people in the television and film world. So yeah, that was really wonderful, and I made some great contacts. One of which was the producer, who I eventually was able to give my script when I returned. And yeah, it was immediately optioned for £1, which it remained so for the next 3 years. And then it looked like everything had sort of fallen apart, really. We'd lost sort of a lot of finance. We couldn't get BBC interested. We couldn't get Film 4 interested. We couldn't get BFI interested, which is sort of, if you want to make a independent film, you sort of need one of those sort of legacy sort of people behind you, really. And just at the 11th hour, Screen Island came in and they said, if you'd be willing to come over to Galway, we'll put up half the money. So overnight, it went from looking like nothing was going to happen, and then suddenly it all sort of took off. And within 6 months, we're all in Ireland, sipping Guinness and making films. So yeah, it's pretty crazy, but yeah, it was a real experience.
I mean, I think that is so much the experience of film, and in a way that is sort of different even today, even though the two feel that they've converged a lot, quite different from the world of high-end television drama, where things have at least got a more regularity to them, and there is a commissioning process that fundamentally is driving things along. I mean, the scale of these industries, by the way, for those of you who are tuning into us and who aren't aware of this, I mean, Britain is now the second biggest filmmaking hub in the world after California. It's about a £6 billion a year industry. So it's absolutely enormous. Now, a lot of that is high-end television series, and a lot of that's made here. A lot of that is Netflix, actually, and Amazon. And then a lot of it is stuff that's a small part of that is British independent film, and a lot of it is American productions that are made here. I mean, who knew that Star Wars was a British film? But it has been ever since it started. They're all made here. But it is therefore, at one end, highly industrial,
Hmm.
and at the other end, it's completely artisanal and low budget and crafted by hand with great love, and all points in between. I mean, I suppose the question I've got, and to which I don't know the answer, by the way, was what it felt like going out into the industry after the school, and what it was like, sort of, for example, getting representation or agents to act for you, and scary, was it, or was that something that you all took to like ducks to water?
Theo, I will start with you because I can see you smiling. So I'm assuming you're going to say it was really easy.
Yeah, super easy. It was do you know what, I came out of LFS making a decision that I didn't want to work on other people's scripts. I wanted people to be reading my scripts. So I didn't want to be working in production. They're really long hours. So it was figuring out like how much time would I
Mm.
have to myself to write. So
Hmm.
I had to make, you have to make that choice. And some people would much rather the stability of, working, for a production company and reading other people's scripts, and that's totally fine. But it wasn't for me. But so that came with a lot of financial stress. But what it did do was give me time to write and yeah, just hone my craft, because you come out of LFS with a script that is, strong, it's been put through its paces. You've got these amazing sort of development groups, so you come out with a strong piece of writing, but you need to continue writing. Like, that's not going to be the only thing that's going to get you noticed. It might be, it wasn't in my case. So the agent and the sort of writing, it took time. It took, I think, 3 years after I graduated to get an agent, and yeah, so it took 3 years. But you've got to sort of have this mad sort of arrogance and ignorance, and just and this sort of inner belief that is just, yeah, eating you inside, that you just know that you can do it, and that you got to prove it to yourself, and that you'll make those sacrifices along the way, because there's nothing else that you'd rather be doing than sitting in a dark room with a laptop writing. So yeah, so that's my sort of story with getting an agent. It took time, and it was difficult.
I mean, it's an interesting one. I do remember there was a film I worked on quite a long time ago now, Sexy Beast, which was Jonathan Glazer's first film, and became a bit of a legend because it was a very funny, very engaging film, and also one that came out of left field and was very successful. And that was by two writers, Melis and Shinto, who had absolutely never done anything before, and in fact didn't even have representation. And it was a really great example of lightning striking in a really positive way, that they had nailed those characters, and that went really from their script, went to production really surprisingly fast. So it does happen.
And Nicole, I mean, your journey, you came out as a writer, but it feels like you went straight into, you were just going to get your stuff made yourself and into producing. Or did you look for people to make your work for representation and that sort of thing?
I don't know if you remember, but we had agents from Casarato who came into class. That was a very impactful session, because after the session, you said, Sophia, that having an agent or a manager is good, but they have to have something to activate. And you said activate, and I was like, okay. And you were like, this is practically keep writing, just write and write and write. And Theo is right that the script you come out of school with is good, but it is only the product of a year. And my ideas tend to take 3 years to fully gestate. And I had optioned a book by a Ugandan British writer, before I started LFS, because I loved it so much. And it was a short story. And throughout the period at LFS and after, I kept writing the feature. And that feature was part of my portfolio of a short and stuff I did at school. And when I was able to interview different representatives, the reason I got my agent was because there was a portfolio of writing. And so I think it showed the range, it showed the diversity, but I had already made my short. I had already made, was working on my feature in post. And I think the moral of that experience, or the lesson, sorry, was you have to have a reason to be in this, I don't want to say industry, vocation, really, that transcends those markers of achievement. Agent, manager, what success looks like is a daily bread thing. Did you wake up? Did you research a little bit on your story? Did you write a few pages, or even a scene or half a scene? I think that grounding that I got at school was define success for yourself, because the agent will not define that for you. So yeah, that was my experience.
I do think those are wonderfully wise words, actually. And they sort of also encapsulate the sort of determination that every writer has to have
Yes.
in their pursuit of something that's quite elusive to everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And Richard, I think you were like the dream for students because your script was optioned before you had representation, wasn't it? So it was just you and this and the screenplay. You got it out there yourself.
Yeah, I I had to like negotiate some serious like contract stuff without any representation whatsoever. The Writers Guild were really helpful. I was able to send like the options and the contracts over to them, and they free of charge had a look at it and got back to me and said, you know, what I should negotiate with. But I have to say it was a really crazy time, but I couldn't seem to get representation. I'd been round every house two or three times, and it was confusing and baffling because I was literally had a project that was just going into production, and I was sort of totally guided, and you were really helpful as well, Sophia, I must say. So thank you so much for your guidance. Thankfully, I
She's
do have an
blushing. She's
agent.
blushing.
I do have an agent now, but I think like in this industry and without being too philosophical, probably in life, things are never quite as you think they're going to be. And you sort of think when you get an agent, like, okay, here we go. Like, let's just, you know, the work comes rolling in. And this is no criticism of my agent or anything like that whatsoever. But it's apart from sort of general meetings, there hasn't been a sort of glut of sort of, you know, projects sort of coming in, and my other projects that aren't this film haven't necessarily progressed so well. Having said that, Rachel, my agent, does feel that like we want to hold off a little bit until until the film comes out, sorry, and then really try and ride that wave. But yeah, just to quickly speak back to what the first question Chris asked, which was coming out of LFS, and I have to say those first few months took a little bit of like re-evaluating expectancy, I suppose. So the first couple of months I spent sort of cold calling production houses, producers, and agents, just thinking that, you know, someone's going to be like, oh, I cannot write this guy, she's just come out of LFS. Guys, let everyone gather around and read this new writer's script. And, you know, people say it's like the rejection that kills you, but I actually found it was the silence that kills you. But then, so what you have to do, and you know, I had to sort of take stock, and I think what you have to do is you have to sort of figure out how to sort of game the system, I suppose. Like, how can you, you know, how can you get on someone's desk? And that for me was sort of slowly building my CV up, like I mentioned, with theatre work, and then, you know, going to sort of, you know, various awards, and then, you know, going to Series Mania and things like that. So I think we all live in hope of that sort of Goodwill Hunting thing where it's that, you know, it's sort of Matt Damon, Ben Affleck just slap down that, you know, and it's Oscar season, you know, a year later. But yeah, I do think the majority of us, it is just about putting those building blocks in place. So start at the bottom and just slowly build and build and build and build, and then hopefully your cachet builds, and hopefully, yeah, you're sort of, you know, then you're able to really like sit down at the table, as it were, in the industry.
And can I ask about, there's a question here about the background and do you need a creative writing experience beforehand? Can I just ask about your experience before the school and that what you then took into, you know, moving into the industry? Did you all come from a creative writing background or film background? And Theo, I'll start with you again.
Yeah. Yes, I had a BA honors in creative writing. I never knew that screenwriting was really a thing after my degree. So I sort of came out wanting to do music journalism, and then I was trying my hand at like trying to write a children's grotesque sort of literature book about, like, you know, the kid who picked his nose so much he picked out his own brain. Um, yeah, and then tried my hand at theatre. Just I always just loved writing, but I never knew what form that was going to take. And then of my friend. We did like a trip up the west coast of America in a VW camper van, and I found myself. And he's a commercials director, and he was like, "Look, you love screenwriting. Sorry, you love writing. You love film. You've sort of always been a film buff. He's like, why don't you do a master's in screenwriting?" And it was like a light bulb went off. So I sort of returned to education a good sort of 5, 6 years after I had actually graduated from my BA. But I think like this, I had no film experience other than just loving film. But I remember the applications probably changed quite a bit from 10 years ago. But I remember submitting a scene from like a theatre piece that I had written, and also like a story that I wanted to explore more. And they're almost sort of like I want to say like trigger questions, but yeah, there were questions that were asking like, what type of story like would you want to tell if you were on our masters, and then had an interview, and it was just great, and it was really supportive, and so I didn't feel like shit. I've got to come from a film studies, a BA in film sort of background. I had done creative writing, English literature and creative writing as a BA, but there were also people on my course at that time who weren't didn't have that sort of creative writing background, but had something to show that they were worthy of being on a course like this. Because at the end of the day, it is competitive as well. So you got to fight for your place.
Yeah, good point. Nicole, your background, journalism, but did you have creative writing or film in there as well?
The direct answer is yes, as a like Theo loved it. But I love this question because I see myself in this question. I loved history in high school, specifically South African history and East African history. And my teacher just made it seem like this is the craziest thing that ever happened. Look at these people. See how we're repeating the mistakes. See how, history rhymes. And I remember, I don't know who said this, but someone said there's a reason there's no writing proteges at, very young, because writing requires living a life. And if you've lived a life and everyone's life is worth, evaluation, then you deserve to be a writer. I think everyone is a writer. Just the screenwriting is the hardest form of writing, having been a journalist and, writing bad poetry and all the other creative writing elements. I think writing for the screen demands an incredible level of honesty that I had not experienced in journalism. And I was doing marketing before I went to school. But I loved stories so much. I loved reading, and I just knew writing was so hard that I didn't know if I was qualified to have a career in it. But yeah, I think having good friends who shout at you and tell you, like Theo's friend, you actually love this. Why don't you go do a master's? My friend also shouted at me and is like, can you stop wasting your time and go and apply to this program?
Good to have friends like that who support you. And I think that's also what you get here at the film school. You get that network who support
Yeah.
you when you then go out into the industry. And can I ask the same question, Richard, because you've got things on the stage. So did you have a writing or theatre background before you came in?
I didn't have a theatre background, but I was brought up about 15 minutes away from Stratford upon Avon, and my parents took me to Shakespeare from like the age of like 6 or 7. And I just remember sitting there watching these things, thinking, what on earth are these people talking about? When can I go home? But I do think that had a quite a profound effect on me, sort of the osmosis of that sort of language. But no, I did a BA in philosophy at Cardiff. And then just sort of found myself sort of in the service industry for like 5 or 6 years. I'm not entirely sure how I ended up there, but I was always writing. I was doing short stories. I was writing some really awful poetry, like dreadful, self-indulgent Oh God, I read it a few years ago. I was like, this is the worst thing ever. And I was writing screenplays. I didn't know how to write them. I didn't know how they were formatted. So I just used to use Word, and I just used to like do all the sort of spaces and stuff like that. I didn't realize there was even sort of formatting software. And music journalism as well was a thing for me. For about a year and a half, I lived in Oxford, and I just went to any possible gig I could go to, reviewed it, tried to get an interview with any band I could. Unfortunately, I think it was just bad timing. It was the time when NME had just stopped its like print version, and it had all gone sort of online. And I just think it was a bad time in that respect. But I think that was really, really, actually really useful just for stuff like structure. You know, you're still using sort of three-act structures, weirdly enough, even when you're penning an interview or a review. But no, I was working in a coffee shop, and this guy kept coming in, and we got on really well. And so I asked one of my colleagues, I was like, "What is it that Jake does?" And she was like, "Oh, he doesn't like talking about it because everyone tries to give him scripts, but he's a screenwriter." And I was like, "Oh, cool." So the next time he came in, I was like, "Jake, I'm so sorry to ask. I've got a script." And he was like, "Oh, for God's sake!" She's like, "It's the last thing, sort of." Yeah, I think I guess sort of screenwriters want to hear because like there's probably I'm sure they're inundated with everyone who's got a great film idea. But anyway, he quite liked the script. We developed it a bit, and then he sent it off to his agent, who gave us a very polite no. But he was like, "Richard, you've got a voice and you've got something here. Why don't you consider it?" So I saved up for a couple of years, and then I was so privileged to be welcomed into LFS and just had the best year there, the absolute best year. I was such a swot. When I did my BA, I was such a sort of chaotic, like I missed all the lectures. But when I was at LFS, I was like front of the class. We'd done the reading. It was great. It was a real experience. Yeah. So again, thank you, Sophia, for that. That was great.
It's a real evening of tributes, Sophia. I mean, my experience of this, and I spent most of my career working in film marketing and then as a producer, but was the diversity of backgrounds. I remember working with Nick Cave on a film, and obviously that background as a songwriter was just a totally different thing that I had never even thought about. And we did a film called The Proposition, and it was incredible because you suddenly realized that all those ballads and all of that stuff is actually very kind of close cousin
Absolutely.
to writing a story that's going to end up in scenes with characters. It's in a way closer to a screenplay than a novel would be,
Yes.
say. And that was a sort of moment of realization for me, and the same with in fact, I went to a memorial for him, Mark Peplow, who wrote The Last Emperor and won an Oscar for it, and then directed actually a Conrad adaptation. And he started out in documentary filmmaking. And it was his experience of telling true stories through people's own voices that led him to thinking about writing stories that he'd generated. So I think you can come to it from many different places to answer the original question, which we've sort of gone round in a rather wonderful way.
Yeah, no, we're looking for people with things to say and storytellers, as Nicole says. People have these stories, and those who want to explore them and present them in an honest way. But I'd like to ask a really sort of dull, practical question, and again, for an audience who might not know what it looks like to be a screenwriter. So, what's your daily job as a writer or writer-director, other than going to coffee shops and avoiding people trying to give you screenplays? So, Theo, what does your day look like or your week look like as a writer, director, getting projects off the ground, sending them out? What's the practicalities of this?
Um, well, I've got a 6-month-old baby and a 3-year-old. So my time is like this. At the moment, I'm getting up at 3 o'clock to do a feed, and then I work from 3:30 until 7:30, where the house is quiet and silent. And yeah, I've just got got myself. And
Can I just
yeah,
ask,
no,
is that your writing time? So that's time when you're there at your desk, you're writing ideas, or are you sort of applying for things, or trying to
right.
get?
Sorry. Yeah. No. So that I'm writing a script. So I'm writing the feature for BBC Film, and currently writing a treatment for jealous people or ugly people, like an adaptation into a feature, and also currently compiling a sort of pitch deck for Blossom, which is the TV series. Just because I've finished writing the two scripts that I got commissioned to write. So now it's about sort of packaging it into a sexy document, which entices commissioners to say, yes, here's some money to go make the thing.
I wonder if it's worth mentioning that we've got a few more minutes. And obviously it's a lot of fun for us to talk to each other. But for those of you who are out there who want to put in any questions before we get to the end of the session, do feel free to ping them in to us, because there won't be that much longer. And it's better to be able to answer your questions live while we're all gathered than one or two of us answer them remotely by email.
Absolutely.
Perhaps worth asking a question about what you did, each of you, briefly, to apply to the school. I mean, when you were applying to the course, did that feel like a big task? What did you have to put in? What did you actually do as your submission for the application? Do you remember?
Nicole,
I can't remember. So hopefully Nicole and Richard can answer that one.
Yeah, I remembered. I think there was the personal statement, there was the writing sample, but for the personal statement, this isn't any regular personal statement, especially because it's quite different from the bachelor's one. I remember having to ask my mom, because I thought I had to ask myself the question, why do I think I want to do this degree? I was paying for it myself. It's a huge, massive investment. I also was just in awe that I could do it. So I had to dig into my family history and, to make that personal statement or to write that personal statement, I had to ask my mom questions about our family and about the education. So one of the things that I learned was my mom was the fourth daughter, and she was born in 1953. The sisters before her did not go to school. And he changed his mind about taking girls to school because he had taken two boys to school. And so he said, oh yeah, I think it's time for a girl to go to school. And that decision to educate my mom changed our entire family because I then could grow up and then go to school. I mean, of course, my dad was educated as well, but I think that thing that you are part of this line of women who was educated because a man said, oh, I think let me change my mind. And looking back in my family history gave me confidence that, okay, I think I have maybe a few stories to tell that are a little bit unique to me. Maybe. I wasn't always fully 100% confident, still not, but that exercise of writing the personal statement was amazing. And I thought even if I don't get in, I at least learned something about my family. So
I mean, it is so much of this is about one's own storytelling growth, the mining of one's own life,
absolutely.
and the mining of one's own experience. And in a way, that journey is made, and I am not a writer, but I have been friends with writers for many, many years. And it's kind of that fascinating thing of people, in that informal way, in a sort of pub and cafe sort of way, saying, oh, I've met this character the other day, or this thing came to me from my grandfather's life, or I found this letter. And it's the prompts that lead you into story that I think are always fascinating. And I speak as an observer and somebody who, used to think about this a lot as a producer, primarily. Where did it all come from? And that is such a
Yeah.
mysterious question because it comes from so many places and you can't really legislate for them. Um, I always wondered, I got to know Frank Cottrell Boyce, who's quite a well-known English screenwriter, quite well because I had a professional relationship with Michael Winterbottom, the director. And it seemed to me extraordinary that Frank had such a fertility of story ideas. And he always just used to say, well, it's just because I talk to lots of people, which I thought was lovely and simple
Yes.
and sort of very democratic of him, actually. He didn't really take much credit for his own rather brilliant mind.
No, that's one of the things that we really encourage here, that, the ideas come from you, and we really stress that sense of developing the voice and just sort of finding yourself, because we can help you with the craft, but really you're the ones who provide the art and the fuel and the themes. I can see there was a question about studying in London. And did you feel that there were more opportunities and thriving film community? Because of course you were all based in Covent Garden, in our lovely walk up, I think Longacre. You all had experience of that. Just 5 minutes from Parker Street, and Parker Street is much better. But what was your experience of being in London and studying film here?
So I actually I couldn't afford to live in London, so I lived on the outskirts of Oxford, and I would get
Yes.
the megabus in every day, which was
Wow.
somewhere between 2 and 3 hours each way. I'd be spending
Wow.
between 4 and 6 hours on a bus every day, which in some ways was hellish because you'd be up at 5:30 in the morning, waiting to catch your bus. But it did give you a lot of time for like reflection and a lot of time to write, and then on the way home to sort of soak in everything that happened in the day. So I can't speak a lot to living in London, unfortunately, but it is doable if you like megabuses and hate good Wi-Fi.
I have to say, Richard, we've not met in person, but I salute you. That
Yeah.
is that is heroic.
Wow.
Oh well, thank you. I don't know if I'd go that far. It was just, yeah, I took one look at sort of flat prices in London and I was just like, okay, no, we can't manage that. I had a job in Oxford as well at the weekend, so I was still working in a
Yeah.
hotel in Oxford. So I could come home at the weekend and then I could do, 15, 20 hour shifts there.
It is, of course, the secret joy of a writer's life that the work is largely portable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. I'm inspired by Richard's commute. I mean, but also Richard described what my experience was like. Just so excited to come to class. Was lucky not to get a job, but I stayed with family. And there's so many opportunities to soak in London. My favorite place to be was the Bush Theatre's library. It's no longer there now, but it was my favorite place to go read plays, go to plays. You have student discounts for Picture House, for all the other cinemas, and I was going to watch movies all the time. The Academy's Office Outpost, still to this day, the films that were in the international selection that year I'm fond of them because I had a deeper understanding being a filmmaking student. But London is extremely expensive, but you can be practical and disciplined and find a way and share costs with the other students. Had a lot of beers at the pubs with my friends from school, but there's a happy hour if you're into that shit. But yeah, yeah.
I think it's worth emphasizing. I mean, the sense of community at the school is quite strong,
I
and
think so.
I certainly always felt that there was a kind of liveliness about the school. I first came across the school when I met an Argentinian writer director in the late 80s and ended up helping him make his second film, and sitting in that really sort of fairly scuzzy those days canteen in the old building. But it was wonderful and it was life-changing. And when I came here to the school, I rang him in Argentina and he burst out laughing and he said, do you remember the first time I told you the story sitting on the pews in the space outside Cinema A in the old building? And it came flooding back to me. And that was, well, more significantly more than 30 years after the event. Quite remarkable.
And Theo, can I ask about your experience? So, of course, you're now based in Birmingham, where Stephen Knight is, and they have a great thriving scene. Were you down in London? You were down in London, weren't you, when you were here?
Yeah, I was living in Deptford at the time.
Mm.
And I was working as a gin mixologist Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, so that was fun. And yeah, it was just that's what you have to do in London. It's what you have to do anywhere. You got to pay rent. Um, but yeah, so it's but I remember getting onto Goldsmith's MA course, and it was half the price of the London Film School, but I still chose the London Film School, even though it meant taking a larger loan out from the bank at that time, because MAs weren't
Mm.
um sort of government funded, well, that you still have to pay them back, but um but it was, yeah, it was a sacrifice I was willing to make, just because of the prestige of the school, and it was double the price. But you if you pay with peanuts, then you get monkeys, as the expression goes. So um I wanted the best tutors, and I wanted the best people um to be coming into the school, who sort of lived and breathed the industry. And yeah, all those sort of industry panels yeah of are just brilliant and really inspiring, and they can't be matched. So I'm glad I paid paid double. um so yeah.
So I'm conscious of the time, and Holly's come on to sort of suggest that we've got to wrap it up. But if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to just ask one last question, because we all know that the industry is like really challenging, a complete nightmare. When I got into the industry, everybody said it was the worst thing ever because it's really awful. So, but yeah, here I still am and loving it. So I'd just like to ask all of you, despite all of these challenges, why do you work in the industry? What it is about it that, gets you up in the morning to continue doing what can be a bit of a challenge. Nicole, I will start with you. I'll give Theo time to think. Nicole.
Oh man, I'm gonna be very woo-woo here and say, I mean, not woo, but just I think writing or just storytelling is the thing that I do better than anything else. And that is a selfish reason to do it. But the practical and spiritual reason is because I want to bear witness to what it means to live a life. And I'm not somebody who thought my life was interesting at all. I thought everyone else's was interesting. And if you've got the gift, this gift, that you've been given by God or anybody else, that you feel, oh, I can do this a little bit better than my friend. My friends used to tease me and say, writing feels like homework. Why would you ever want to do it? And I thought, this is the way I breathe. So I think when you stifle your gift, you become emotionally constipated and you become a little bit bitter. And I'm speaking from experience. The years where I thought it's too hard, it's too much. I don't think I can do this. We're miserable, more miserable than, being broke but writing. Still broke and writing. So I think there's opportunity to see the world, and we owe it to, I guess, the human race to bear witness to it. So yeah, that's why I do it.
Thank you. Richard, same question to you. The why?
I think it's a really good question because obviously, the cohort that you go to film school with, or the people that you meet at the Brit List or Series Mania, they do fall away. Like I was literally chatting to a guy today who's just an incredibly talented writer. I think a better writer than me personally, and he's just applied to start his teacher training, and he's going to go and teach at a secondary school because the lack of a steady paycheck, the sort of feast and famine, the emotional roller coaster of thinking you're getting somewhere and then all of a sudden you feel like you're back to square one. So yeah, no, it's a really good question. For me, I mean, it's cheaper than therapy. But seriously, I've always been fascinated with people. I love people. Like I love just sort of, I live in this small little town on the outskirts of Bristol. And I love small talk. I love learning about people, hearing about their lives, where they've come from. My dad always said to me from a very young age, he said, there's always like at first people can seem like dull and they can seem generic, but if you get chatting to someone, you will find something which is genuinely like massively interesting about them. And I think I've sort of followed that through into my work. A lot of my characters on the outskirts might seem like they're pretty, generic, even potentially dull people, but they've got secrets or they've got ambitions or dreams. And I just love unpacking that and sort of trying to figure out life through a sort of narrative format, I suppose.
And Theo.
You came to me last, but my answer is not going to be as good as Richard's or Nicole's. But I think what it narrows down to is I just love cinema and sitting in a dark room with a bunch of strangers and having that communal experience about watching a story that can, have a profound effect on you. And that's really beautiful. And that's what I'm striving for constantly, is to have that effect on people in a dark room.
And that's the experience I think we still have every week when we're sitting together in Cinema A. And it's been absolutely lovely hearing you testify to your experience here, to your ambitions and to your sense of possibility. It's been absolutely moving, if I may say. So really thank you, all three of you, very, very much indeed. It's
Thank
really
you. Thanks for having us.
lovely.
Thanks, everybody, and thank you for all of our guests. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Richard, Nicole, and Theo, and to all of our guests, of course. We're going to leave it there. If anybody does have any questions, you can always email us at admissions@lfs.org.uk. But thanks very much for joining us. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.
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 Thank you.